What if I told you that the greatest danger to your life is not war, not famine, not even death itself, but stupidity? Yes, stupidity. And before you laugh, before you think I'm just being dramatic, I want you to stop and ask yourself something. How many times in your life have you suffered, not because of some evil genius, not because of a deliberate act of cruelty, but because of the careless, thoughtless, bumbling actions of someone too blind to see the damage they were causing? Maybe it was the boss who destroyed your workplace with incompetence, the politician who made decisions that doomed an entire generation. Or maybe it was even you. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because the terrifying truth is that stupidity isn't just out there somewhere. It lives in us. It infects us. And if we're not careful, it rules us. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian murdered by the Nazis, once wrote that stupidity is far more dangerous than evil. Evil, he said, can be resisted. It carries with it the smell of corruption, the shadow of guilt. You can see it coming. You can fight it. But stupidity? Stupidity is invisible. It's silent. It spreads like fog across a valley until everything is swallowed and no one even notices. Think about that. We live in a world where stupidity wears the mask of confidence, where the least informed shout the loudest, where the most reckless are rewarded with power. Psychologists today call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the paradox where the less someone knows, the more certain they are of their opinions, while the truly intelligent, the reflective, the thoughtful, remain paralyzed by doubt. Nietzsche once mocked this very pattern. He said convictions are prisons. The stupid are convinced, utterly certain. The wise are hesitant. And so, in the grand game of life, who do people follow? Not the wise who whisper in nuance, but the fools who scream in absolutes. History is littered with this tragedy. The Roman Empire crumbling as leaders feasted and played games. The French Revolution, where blood drowned the streets in the name of justice, but gave rise to terror. The 20th century, where entire nations followed incompetent ideologues into wars that destroyed millions of lives. And always, it was not intelligence that led. It was not wisdom. It was stupidity disguised as strength. But let's pause here, because it's too easy to point fingers, too easy to mock those idiots out there. The real question, the only question that matters, is this: where is stupidity ruling your life? When you procrastinate, knowing it sabotages your future. When you give in to anger, knowing it ruins your relationships. When you chase approval, knowing it will never satisfy you. These are acts of stupidity, quiet, private acts of self-sabotage. And here lies the most terrifying truth. Stupidity doesn't just destroy nations, it destroys lives. It destroys yours. Plato warned of this 2,500 years ago. He saw democracy as dangerously fragile because people would always be tempted by easy lies instead of hard truths. Give them bread, give them games, give them the illusion of choice, and they will cheer their own chains. Sound familiar? Today, it's not gladiators, but endless scrolling. Not emperors, but influencers. And still, we worship them. We are entertained into stupidity. Now here's the twist you didn't want to hear. The system doesn't just tolerate stupidity, it rewards it. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote that leaders don't need to be good, they only need to appear good. And in a world where appearances matter more than truth, the clever will manipulate, while the wise will hesitate. Thus, the stage is never ruled by philosophers, but by actors.
And maybe that's the design. Because a population distracted by stupidity is a population that can be controlled. But here's the part where you might feel exposed. Because you are not immune. Every time you follow the herd instead of thinking for yourself, every time you silence your doubts because it feels safer to conform, every time you click, like, share without reflection, you feed the machine. You become part of the stupidity you claim to despise. And yet, within this bleak truth hides a possibility. Because unlike evil, stupidity has no intent. It has no mastermind. It is simply the absence of awareness, the absence of reflection. And awareness, that is something you can choose. Imagine if more people paused before reacting. If more people asked, "What if I'm wrong?" If more people dared to seek wisdom, even when it hurt, even when it exposed them. That's where change begins. Not in revolutions or riots, but in the simple, quiet decision to resist the stupidity in yourself. Nietzsche once said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try, you will be mocked. If you question, you will be silenced. If you seek wisdom, you will be lonely." But perhaps that is the price of freedom. Perhaps the curse of being awake in a stupid world is also its only hope. So now I leave you with this thought. The world will always reward fools. The stage will always belong to liars, narcissists, and clowns. But you do not have to play their game. Your choice is simple. Will you sink into the comfort of stupidity? Or will you bear the weight of awareness, even if it hurts? Because if Bonhoeffer was right, if stupidity is more dangerous than evil, then the only resistance is to awaken, to see, to think. The question is, are you brave enough to resist the tyranny of stupidity? And if not you, then who? What if I told you the greatest danger you face is not war, not poverty, not even death itself, but stupidity? That sounds almost laughable at first. After all, stupidity is something we mock, not something we fear. We make memes about it, we complain about it, but we don't treat it like the deadly force it is. And yet, look closely at your life, at history, at the world we live in today. How many of the disasters you've seen were caused by deliberate evil, and how many by sheer stupidity? Think about the boss who wrecked your workplace because he couldn't listen. The politician who made reckless decisions that cost thousands of lives. The friend who destroyed their own future by chasing an illusion. Or maybe, if you're brutally honest, it was even you, sabotaging yourself in ways you knew were foolish, but couldn't stop. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because stupidity isn't just out there in other people. It lives inside us. It rules us when we're not paying attention, and that's what makes it terrifying. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian who resisted Hitler and paid for it with his life, once wrote, "Stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice." Why? Because evil can be exposed, resisted, punished. Evil is intentional. It wears a face. It leaves fingerprints. But stupidity is faceless. It doesn't even know it's dangerous. It spreads silently, like fog rolling over a valley, until the world is swallowed in it and nobody even notices. That's why stupidity is the perfect weapon. It has no strategy, no central brain, no conspiracy. It doesn't need one. It multiplies naturally, invisibly, everywhere. Psychologists today call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less someone knows, the more confident they are in their opinions. Meanwhile, the truly intelligent, the reflective, the thoughtful, remain hesitant, doubting themselves, questioning. Nietzsche warned about this more than a century ago. Convictions are prisons. The fools are certain, the wise are cautious. And in the marketplace of human attention, who wins? Not the cautious, not the ones whispering nuance, but the loud, the arrogant, the certain. We follow the confident fool, not the hesitant sage. And history keeps paying the price. Look back at Rome, crumbling under the weight of leaders more interested in games and feasts than the survival of the empire. Look at the French Revolution, meant to free the people, but swept into a frenzy of blood and chaos. Look at the 20th century, where entire nations followed incompetence and ideology into wars that killed millions. Again and again, stupidity, disguised as strength, takes power. And wisdom, too quiet, too doubtful, is ignored. But here's the painful part. This isn't just about them, it's about you. Where is stupidity ruling your life? When you procrastinate, knowing it sabotages your dreams. When you lash out in anger, knowing it will break what you love. When you chase approval from strangers, knowing it leaves you empty. These are not acts of evil. They are acts of stupidity. Quiet, private acts that slowly rot your future. And if you're honest, you've done them more times than you want to admit. Plato warned about this thousands of years ago. He feared democracy, not because he hated freedom, but because he knew people are easily seduced by comforting lies. Give them bread, give them games, give them leaders who speak in absolutes, and they will cheer for their own chains. Does that sound familiar? Today, the bread and games are endless scrolling, viral trends, dopamine hits from likes and views. And still, we cheer for it. We are entertained into stupidity.
Now, here's the twist you weren't expecting. The system doesn't just tolerate stupidity, it rewards it. Machiavelli, the ruthless political thinker, wrote that rulers don't need to be good, they only need to appear good. In a world where appearances matter more than truth, the stage is dominated not by philosophers, but by performers. Not by thinkers, but by actors. And the world cheers for them. Because the wise hesitate, the reflective doubt themselves, but the fools, they never doubt, and so they rise. And now the uncomfortable mirror. You are not immune. Every time you scroll without thinking, you feed the system. Every time you silence your doubts and conform, you help stupidity spread. Every time you chase the easy answer instead of the difficult truth, you become part of the very problem you despise. That's the real tyranny. Stupidity is not forced on us, we choose it, little by little, every day. But here lies the one fragile hope. Unlike evil, stupidity has no intent. It has no mastermind. It thrives only where there is no awareness. And awareness? That is something you can choose. Imagine if more people paused before reacting. If more people asked, what if I'm wrong? If more people dared to seek wisdom, even if it hurt, even if it isolated them. That would be enough to change the world. Not revolutions, not riots, but the simple, radical act of resisting stupidity in yourself. Nietzsche once wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." If you resist stupidity, you will be mocked. If you question, you will be silenced. If you think deeply, you will feel alone. But maybe that's the cost of freedom. Maybe the curse of being awake in a stupid world is also its only hope. So here's the thought I want to leave you with. The world will always reward fools. The crowd will always crown liars, narcissists, and clowns. But you don't have to play their game. Your choice is simple. Will you sink into the comfort of stupidity, or will you bear the heavy, lonely, painful burden of awareness? Because